Welcome into the lounge presented by DraftKings. I'm Garrett Downing, and I'm joined today by Clifton Brown. We are here at the NFL owners meetings in West Palm Beach, Florida. We just wrapped up the coaches breakfast here for the AFC coaches. Had a chance to talk with head coach John Harbaugh for about a half hour this morning on a wide-ranging number of topics here. And Clifton and I are going to break it all down and share what our takeaways are from that conversation and also what we're hearing from down here at the Breakers in Florida. So, Cliff, just to start the conversation, what stood out to you in the conversation with Harbaugh this morning?
Well, I just love how relaxed guys are. Coaches are way more in this atmosphere than they are during the regular season, where they're just coming off maybe a loss and trying to think about what's the next opponent. John, I think really, I like how good he feels about this team. They've made a lot of off-season moves, the Ravens have, and he talked about how they could play a game today. I really feel that way, too, that they have one of the best rosters in the NFL right now. Talked about how, obviously, with Ronnie Stanley bringing him back and the other moves that they've made, that they have the foundation for a Super Bowl contender going into the draft. And so they're in a great spot now. You look at the coaches around the room, Mike Tomlin's right beside him. They're asking him who's going to be their quarterback next year. We kind of know that answer with the Ravens. So, I thought, it was getting good insight about the positive vibes that John Harbaugh feels right now.
Well, you talk about just the kind of relaxed atmosphere, and that's certainly nice weather and palm trees and it being here in March. I think all that helps kind of the relaxed nature of these meetings. And these meetings, just to set the stage here for listeners and viewers back home, like they are really important. You basically all 32 owners, head coaches, general managers, other key league personnel, they're all here in one place. And so these meetings, but there's a lot of behind-the-scenes conversation. We're only privy to a portion of what actually happens here during these meetings. So there's a lot that goes on behind closed doors, but you're having rules conversations. You're having conversations about the future of the league. Like there's a lot of those types of discussions and decisions that are made here at these meetings. And so it's a pretty, the draft, of course, is a huge off-season event. The combine gets a ton of attention. But in terms of league business, this event is really one of the most significant on the calendar.
Yes, and, it's also fascinating to me the insatiable appetite that people have for the NFL. I mean, we're in March, and now, end of March going into April, draft still a few weeks away. I remember coming here a long time ago, there'd be 5 or 6 reporters around a head coach. Now you better get there early or you're not going to have a seat. You've got John only answering the questions from the Baltimore media. There's people coming in popping about, the tush-push rule change that might come. And, he never knows what kind of question you're going to get now. But, the NFL is a 12-month-long, never-stop cycle. And this has become a big part of it now that, these meetings, as you mentioned, everyone's here. There've already been a lot of fascinating trades this offseason, but, the draft is coming up. There'll be some talks here that lead to something happening, on draft night or close to it, involving, several teams. And, the Ravens, we know Eric DeCosta likes to make a lot of moves. So, anyone you want to talk to, you don't have to pick up the phone this week to talk to another general manager, another owner, another coach. They're all right here. So that always creates some things that are going to happen down the road. Yeah,
so in terms of Coach Harbaugh and the conversation with him, the big news on that front was right before the owners' meeting started. We announced that the team and Harbaugh have agreed to a contract extension, a 3-year extension through the 2028 season. So that is big news, obviously, for both sides. Previously, he was going into the final year of his contract. Everyone thought that a deal would get done at some point. It was a matter of when, not if. And so the deal gets done, and he talked about that today. And, of course, feeling like the Ravens are a great organization. Obviously, there's been 17 years, great years so far, with more on the horizon. And he made the point that he felt like he was 5 for 5. And that came out of a conversation with his agent. And he explained that in saying that when you look at it, I've had the 2 best presidents in the National Football League in Dick Cass and Sashi Brown, the 2 best general managers in the National Football League in Ozzie Newsome and Eric DeCosta, and the best owner in Steve Bisciotti. And feels like he's really fortunate to have been in this place as long as he has. And the Ravens are fortunate that Harbaugh's been their coach for as long as he has. So I think it's exciting for these two sides to be able to continue a really fruitful relationship up to this point.
Yeah, I mean, we talk about John Harbaugh, the length of his tenure.
Yeah.
You may never see this again in Ravens history. Moving forward, a coach being here for that long. And to me, one of the fascinating things about Coach Harbaugh is the juice he brings to the job, the energy, it seems to be growing, not diminishing. I mean, you talk about people loving their job. He loves his job, the enthusiasm he brings, despite all the success he's had, the passion never seems to wane. And people now are asking him about, well, how long he's going to coach.
He didn't want to hear any of that.
No. I mean, to me, I think it's a natural question to ask after you've done this so long. Some guys do get burned out. But he seems like the love for his job, is never ending. So, having him under contract, obviously, before entering that last year, that's something the Ravens always have done. They've done it again. It's something that's behind him now. And, I don't think he was worried about it all because both sides know this is a great fit. I mean, it's a great fit. He loves being the Ravens head coach. Steve Bisciotti on down, they love John being the head coach. And I think it definitely adds to the stability of the Ravens franchise. It's one of the reasons why they always have been so successful, because that continuity starts at the top, and certainly at the coaching spot, it has been there now for a long time.
Yeah, the other thing, too, I'd say is that, he's not stagnant at all. He's always looking for ways to evolve the scheme, to evolve the roster. And you saw that in the conversation today. He's talking about the 3.0 version of the offense and making the offense even better and more efficient, despite being the best offense, one of the best offenses in NFL history last year. Talking about coaching changes and some of the defensive changes that they've made, especially in the secondary. And so, all of these things are examples of how he's just constantly looking for ways to evolve as a coach and as a staff. And I think that is why I think he's been able to last as long as he has and be as successful as he has, is because, a mantra that he's had, I think this is probably his whole life, probably instilled in him from his parents, is you're getting better, you're getting worse.
Right.
And he brings that type of mindset every single day. And so he's always looking for ways to evolve. And we see that. And I think, and fans see it, of course. And so I think that's part of the reason he's been as good as he has.
Yeah, you can't stay the same or else you are getting worse. And this league is so competitive. I think that, that's something that you can never lose sight of, that, even though you may be coming off a good year, that teams are always looking to get better, and that if you have to keep the pace. The Ravens have had successful years, but there's no complacency set in. And, of course, in the Lamar era, chasing that carrot of the Super Bowl has always been there and continues to be there. But, I feel confident it's going to happen. As John mentioned today, even after Lamar wins the Super Bowl, it's not going to stop. It's going to try and get 2. Can we get 3? That's how this league is. That, a team like the Chiefs, we saw what happened to them in the Super Bowl this year. They were able to have a great run, but at some point, the team's going to catch you. Now, the Eagles are the team to get beat. And the Ravens are now one of those teams, I think, that when you see the Ravens on your schedule, they get everyone's A game.
Yeah.
And it gets harder and harder to stay. They're trying to win their 3rd division championship in a row. But that's the league. That's the nature of the league. You have to keep getting better. But with Lamar, with John, with so many competitive, Eric, everyone in the Ravens organization is so competitive, they welcome that challenge. And, we saw that reflected today in John's comments.
Well, one thing he talked about, and this is probably the big picture theme in a lot of ways for the Ravens this offseason going into next year, is the question of how you get over the hump. The Ravens have been knocking on the door. They've been in the playoffs every year but one since Lamar Jackson's been the quarterback. And so they've been right there, gone to the AFC Championship, went to the divisional round, of course, last year. And so how do you get to that next step, get to a Super Bowl, and win it? And so he was asked that with the context of something that Ronnie Stanley said after signing his contract, where Ronnie, obviously a veteran player, made the point that the Ravens just have to get out of their own way at times. And so here's what Harbaugh said in response to that question, and in terms of building a team and an approach in order to get out of their own way and take that next step.
That's a theme that we've had for 17 years is get out of our own way, be on the same page. We really want to be as in sync as we possibly can in everything we do. We try to chase every detail in terms of things that are important. Winning football, we call it. The winning football intangibles, the impactfuls, the importance to winning. Those are the things you want to be great at. And you're not going to be great. You're not going to necessarily be perfect at all those things in every game, but you want to chase perfection in every area. So you get into a game and things don't go your way. You get unlucky. The ball doesn't bounce your way. You make mistakes. The calls don't go your way. Whatever it might be, you're still so good in all the other areas that you're able to overcome those things and find a way to win the game irregardless. We've been able to do that a lot because we've won a lot of games. And every one of these games is really important and impactful. In the playoffs, we haven't been able to put it together for 3 or 4 games to win the Super Bowl championship, and that's the hard thing. That's why only one team does it. So we understand that. That's the way it's set up. But we want to be that team, and we're good enough to do it. So we want to find a way to do it. So the challenge there is the not simple part of it is setting everything up in a way that makes those things that we're intentional about those things every single day. So when those moments happen, in the biggest moments, it's something that we've been doing all along, and it's normal for us. And then we have the best chance to have it go our way in those games. And that's what we're really talking about right now as a coaching staff, is the best way to intentionalize all those things so that, in those big moments that we can follow through and get to the end.
So obviously you said it's kind of built into everything that they're doing. And I thought it was interesting because sometimes coaches dismiss this notion. Like you can hear that it's all just talk. That getting over the hump is more of it's a mental thing, not an actual thing. But he didn't run from that notion. Like he kind of embraced it and talking about how the Ravens need to build everything that they do around this idea of being in position to take that next step, to be in a tough situation that you respond well when it's a playoff game in Buffalo, when it's cold and it's snowy and all that stuff. And so everything, it sounds like from a practical standpoint and from a mental standpoint, they're building their team and their structure to be in position to handle that. What did you think of that answer?
Yeah, I thought it was interesting, and they're always going to be thinking about it because the Ravens know that they are good enough to win a Super Bowl. It's just a question of going out and doing it, playing your best football in the playoffs. That's really what you want to do. If the Ravens accomplish that, then they will win a Super Bowl. They've been the best team in the NFL, certainly I believe, in both 2019, both 2020 and 2023, and I believe that they were certainly good enough to win a Super Bowl last year, but didn't play their best football in the playoffs. That's the key to unlocking where they want to go. And you have to be mentally tough enough to handle the disappointment of not winning a Super Bowl, and you have to continue to be good enough to be a team that can win the Super Bowl. So the Ravens are both to me. I think that they've shown mental toughness already in that every year during the Lamar era, despite them not reaching their ultimate goal, they came back the following year with even more drive to accomplish it. Their disappointments have not broken them. They're as determined as ever to win a Super Bowl. I think that they feel that they're getting closer to figuring it out. And so now it's just a question of doing it. And I think it's important next season, all of last season, I think mentally will be erased because every season is new. Just because they went to the playoffs last year and have gone, often in John Harbaugh's tenure doesn't guarantee anything. Next year's team will be different and they'll have to prove it again. But I think the Ravens under Coach Harbaugh and certainly Lamar Jackson leading the way in the locker room with the talent they have, there's not going to be a hangover off of last year. I think they'll be ready to go.
All right, so I want to hit some of the news items from the coach's breakfast this morning, and we can break those down in more detail. A couple of them. One of them, Mark Andrews. There's been conversation around Mark, and is he back? Definitely. He's going into the last year of his contract. What's the status? And John Harbaugh was very clear in saying that he expects Mark Andrews to be on this team this year. He's just too good of a player. And so that, I think a lot of people felt that way, but there was just kind of this lingering question of what's going to happen on that front. So that's I think, really big. And look, you and I are both big Mark Andrews fans. There's no doubt about that. And I know last season didn't end the way that the Ravens or Mark would have wanted, and he's his own toughest critic. But Mark Andrews has been, he's a Ring of Honor type player. And him and Lamar Jackson have been in this thing together since day one. And I think that it's fitting for them to try to get over that hump like we're talking about. We spent all this time just talking about taking that next step. I think the two of those guys doing it together is really significant.
Right. I mean, Mark Andrews is still one of the best tight ends in football, no question. I think that how determined will he be after what happened to come back and have his best year. If you know Mark at all, you know that is not going to be something that, breaks him, defeats him mentally, and it's going to linger. I think he'll be so eager and is so eager to get back next year. And the Ravens with him have, in my opinion, the best tight end group in football. That's not something that, to me, you want to break up easily, because if something were to happen, unfortunately, to one of those three tight ends, they still have the talent with that room to continue, as long as Mark and Likely and Charlie Cole are there, all three of them leading the way. Lamar and Mark Andrews have a special relationship.
Yeah.
That's also something you don't want to break up easily before you think about doing it. And he's such a great player, Mark is, in the red zone. So for many, many reasons, I'm not surprised that John, really kind of, took Mark as far as saying, stop worrying about him not being here.
Yeah.
He is going to be here. He's such a talented player. Hopefully, Ravens fans, we're going to see Mark be helping hosting a Lombardi Trophy one year. But certainly, I think that, it's not a surprise that he is back.
Yeah, I think a good point you make, too, is it's not just like this is a legacy thing, like, he's been a really good player and he's accomplished so much, so you want him here. Like, he's still a really good player. But he had 11 touchdowns last year, and so he led the team in touchdowns last season. Such a good red zone threat, trusted target for Lamar. And he started the season slow. Like, he came out of the gate slow last year. He had the car accident. He's kind of banged up early in the year, and then got rolling. And then once the ball was rolling downhill, there was no stopping it. And he was so productive over the course of the season. And so, he's still a highly productive player and an important piece of this offense. The Ravens offense, as we just talked about, was the best in the league last year, one of the best we've ever seen. And so, you want to keep that going. You want to keep, and removing Mark from that that'd be really tough. It'd be really tough to keep the offense at the level of productivity, especially from a scoring standpoint in the red zone. He's so good in that area. So I think there's probably a lot of Ravens fans are excited to hear that news.
Yeah, I think, again, Mark still is at the point of his career, he might have his best year next year. To me, you mentioned a good point that he was playing some of his best football late in the season. And that ankle injury he had a couple of years ago was really serious. And I thought that combined with the car accident was part of the reason why he did get off to a slow start. And I think he felt better in December and January physically than he did earlier last season. So now he has a full off season to be healthy. What a workout warrior he is. I think he's going to come back, for training. I can imagine what he's going to look like.
He's going to be so motivated, too, by the way it ended. He's going to be so motivated by that Buffalo game and be driven to erase that memory.
Absolutely.
So that was a big point of coming out of this press conference today. Another one, Lamar Jackson. So, of course, Lamar Jackson's under contract here for several more seasons, signed a 5-year deal. But that cap hit really balloons next year, and Harbaugh was asked about the possibility of, are you going to adjust that contract? Eric DeCosta referenced that possibility at the Combine, last month. And Harbaugh said that they've had internal discussions and conversations around working out a contract extension with Lamar Jackson. And when that time comes, then he'll just become the highest paid player in football, just like he was the last time he signed the contract. And that's how it works for quarterbacks. Whoever gets the new deal, who's a premier quarterback, ends up being the highest paid player until the next guy gets a deal.
Right.
And so when there's been a few more players that have gotten those contracts signed. Justin Herbert, I can't even remember all of them, but there's been several players who have signed contracts since Lamar signed his deal 2 years ago. And so it's only a matter of time until they get that done. And I think that speaks to what we've been discussing in a lot of ways, like the core and the continuity that's in place with Lamar as the quarterback, with John as the head coach, with Steve and with Eric. Like, this is the core, and they are working towards this Super Bowl together.
Right. And maneuvering the salary cap is always going to be,
that's part of it. Yeah,
part of the cost of doing business when you have a great quarterback, like Lamar Jackson or Joe Burrow, Patrick Mahomes. You're going to have to move around the salary cap to make sure that you can continue to improve and build a team around them that can help them win a Super Bowl. The Ravens, I think, have been very good at that. But since Lamar just signed this most recent contract, that is now, from now to the rest of his career, that's going to be part of the equation of building the Ravens, maneuvering around Lamar's contract. So The Ravens, I think, so far have done a very good job. Look at all the moves they've made this offseason, even though Lamar is under this contract. When they move forward, they're going to have to continue to make adjustments. But, Lamar's open to that. Both sides know that's part of the deal. And Lamar always has been open about wanting to bring guys into the Ravens fold. Mm-hmm. He loved it when they got Derrick Henry. He loves that they have DeAndre Hopkins. If you're going to get players like that, you have to have room to make those moves. And Lamar and the Ravens are going to be a partnership moving forward, making sure that in spite of the fact that he's going to always have a huge bag, that other guys can also come in to help him win games.
Well, and Harbaugh referenced this, like he made the point, like Lamar, it's a matter of when, not if, for Lamar winning a Super Bowl, and he said that today. Now, he's been Lamar's biggest fan and supporter, of course, since he came into the league. But there's a real belief internally and externally, I think too. But like the Ravens have this belief that they're going to win a Super Bowl with Lamar Jackson as quarterback. He's just too good of a player. And like you've been covering sports like the best for a long time. The best players, oftentimes it can take some time, but then they break through. And when you look at like iconic players of generations, they typically win that championship. There's a handful that don't, but typically speaking, they win that championship. And the Ravens believe that that's going to happen with Lamar. And that's part of the reason that they want him in Baltimore for as long as possible. And he is at the height of his game, but the Ravens think he can even take another step. And I'm not going to bet against that because a year ago when we were having this conversation, I was like, he was just an MVP again. I don't know how much better you can get. And then he took it to another level. So could he get even better? Like, I'm not betting against that. I'm just not going to do that.
Yeah, well, a lot of people who are younger than me, and there are a lot of them, don't even realize, don't know that it took Michael Jordan, I believe, his 8th year to win his first championship. He went 7 years, the great Michael Jordan, without winning an NBA championship. More recently, Peyton Manning, the great career he had. He was getting a lot of the same, questions that Lamar was getting early in his career. Peyton Manning, I believe, maybe lost his first 3 playoff games. He wasn't getting far in the playoffs at all when he initially got in there. It's a question of, again, being mentally strong enough, believing in yourself, knowing it's going to happen. And think about Lamar's career. I mean, the last player taken in the first round, I mean, he's always had things to prove. Mm-hmm. Now that seems outrageous that 31 players could have been taken ahead of him. He's already done things that a lot of people didn't think he could do. He has taken his game every year. To me, he's gotten better and better. I don't think that trend is going to stop anytime soon. So, yeah, I mean, you can't say it's a guarantee he's going to win a Super Bowl, but I guarantee you that he's going to continue to chase and chase and chase, and that he believes he's going to win multiple Super Bowls. And the people who play with him believe he's going to win multiple Super Bowls. As long as that's true, then the outside noise doesn't matter.
And the people who employ him.
Absolutely. He's got which he does. You have to block all that out. He's had to deal with that his whole life. Questions about, can he do this? Yeah, he's a great athlete, but can he do this? I think that's going to help him. I think it's helping him now. That's been his life story. So the fact that he hasn't won a Super Bowl yet is not going to affect Lamar Jackson. And yeah, if my betting, putting my thoughts and beliefs on whether he's going to win a Super Bowl or not, yes, I definitely feel that way, and more than one. So hopefully for Ravens fans, it's going to happen this year. But Lamar, I believe, is going to be a guy that when his career is said and done, he is going to be viewed like a Peyton Manning, mm-hmm. like a Michael Jordan. He's not going to be, Dan Marino's the first one who comes to mind, a great quarterback who didn't win one. Charles Barkley, a great player who didn't win one. Lamar, I believe, is not going to be in that club. And more importantly, he believes that as well.
All right, so we'll take a quick break. When we come back, we'll dive into some of the other news items from head coach John Harbaugh. You're listening to the Lounge podcast from the SeatGeek Studio. SeatGeek Studio is on the road this week. We're down here in Florida in West Palm Beach at the annual owners meetings. We also want to mention our partners at DraftKings Sportsbook. They are an official sports betting partner of the Baltimore Ravens. DraftKings Sportsbook, the crown is yours. So this is the first time we've had a chance to talk with John Harbaugh since some of the offseason moves have been made. Ronnie Stanley extension, bringing in DeAndre Hopkins, bringing in Chido Awuzie, a cornerback. And you could tell in listening to him, like, he is excited about the state of this team. Here's what he had to say in talking about the offseason moves as a whole.
The best way to describe it, I love the fact that we can line up and play right now. I've heard it said before, and it's a good philosophy. We don't play any games till September, so when you have issues or holes, if you want to call it that, you do have time to get better. But we could play a game right now with our roster. We have a really good roster right now. I love our players. I love our depth even. Not that we can't get better. So what our mission right now is to try to improve, is to try to take it to the next level. And the way the roster is set up, it gives us an opportunity to really to go after the best player we can get, whatever the position might be, to improve our team and make the whole better. So I'm looking forward to the draft. We still have some options in free agency. Keep improving.
So clearly, in hearing from him, like, he just feels like the Ravens could go out there and play. And I agree with that. Like, you look through this team, and the Ravens, there's a couple of questions, roster spots up for grabs in terms of starting left guard, and what's the weak side linebacker spot going to look like, and what exactly is the secondary going to look like. But, like, for the most part, the 22 starting jobs on offense and defense, you at least have someone penciled in there. And, like, there's competitions, but the Ravens are in a really good spot. And in a lot of those positions, you have good depth, too. Like, I just think the Ravens are in a really good position roster-wise going into the rest of this offseason.
Yeah, I thought he was candid about the Ronnie Stanley re-signing, how important it was. That had not happened, left tackle is something they were definitely going to have to address in a big way. So to me, that kind of set that was the first domino that kind of fell the Ravens' way in the offseason. And then you add on some of the other moves they've made. They've really, I think, strengthened themselves despite the losses they've had. So there are only a few areas now you're wondering who's going to be the starter. I thought his comments about Trenton Simpson were interesting. Trenton Simpson, he still views him as a starter, and he talked about how hard Trenton is working on this offseason to improve on his play last year. And that, he feels he's going to have a better year, and that he's driven to really secure that spot. And then Patrick Queen made a huge jump his third year. He expects the same from Trenton Simpson. So it'll be interesting, obviously, the draft coming up. That's going to reset the roster and strengthen their depth. But the Ravens, I think they're kind of running it back, as we've talked about this offseason since it ended, that they feel that they are good enough to win a Super Bowl. They didn't have to tear it down or make major changes. They need to just augment what they already had to get to that next level. And that's what they're doing. That's what they're continuing to do. But I think, considering their salary cap situation, you have to be really pleased with what the Ravens have been able to do so far this offseason.
Well, he brought up the addition of cornerback Chido Awuzie, and I thought it was pretty interesting because this was a move that, like, doesn't get a ton of fanfare, but he brought it up pretty quickly and with excitement, and talking about how this is a guy, you look at the advanced metrics on him, his cover skills are great. The issue with him, especially last year, was injuries. And he's had a couple of injuries in the last few seasons that have hurt his ability to stay on the field and be as productive as he had earlier in his career. But he made the point that the Ravens feel like they can get him in the building, work with the team's athletic training staff, medical staff, maybe clean up some of those soft tissue issues, and he can play at a really high level. And I'll tell you, like, I had a chance to meet Chido when he was in the building last week. Really impressive. Just seemed super smart, passionate, driven, felt like he had something to prove. All those things really stood out to me. Also talked about the fact that John Harbaugh was big in recruiting him, and that was one of the deciding factors for him in coming here, the conversations that they had during the process. So I think the Ravens feel pretty good about him and what he'll bring to the secondary. And you have him and Nate Wiggins who can start. You, of course, have Marlon Humphrey who can start outside or inside. But when you look at the secondary overall, Harbaugh also made the point that they really like Marlon inside. They like him sliding into that slot position where he can be closer to the ball. He can play with, like, the physical style that he has. And so I think that if you're, like, lining it up right now, your two outside corners are going to be Nate Wiggins and Chido, and then you're going to have Marlon Humphrey played the slot position. And then at safety, that's the kind of the great unknown right now. You're going to have Kyle Hamilton and Ardarius Washington. But the Ravens still want to add a third safety, but they have just this versatility where they can slide Kyle Hamilton down. They can put another safety on the field. Marlon can play inside or outside. So there's so many options in this secondary. But I just think that overall, I think that fans are probably sleeping a little bit on the significance of the addition of Cheeto Uzan.
Yeah, well, I've been told like Cheeto, he loves playing chess. He's a big-time chess player. Maybe he brings that into the locker room, too. But certainly he's another chess piece that the Ravens have in that secondary. And we all know the Ravens' history. They love corners the way I love chocolate ice cream. I mean, they just always want to have deep cornerback depth. He gives them more addition to that. Nate Wiggins had an excellent rookie season. I expect him to be even better next year. You mentioned about Kyle Hamilton being a chess piece that they want to move all over the field. Kyle's such a unique player that, yes, I definitely do feel that one of their priorities at this point is to get another safety who can be more traditional to allow Kyle to use all the skills that he's blessed with. And then you talk about, you have two players like Marlon Humphrey and Kyle Hamilton who are unique players, not just Pro Bowl players, but unique. That gives, the quarterbacks they have to face, Joe Burrow twice a year. When he comes to the line of scrimmage, he never knows where he may see Kyle Hamilton or Marlon Humphrey or some of the other line up, and then you have guys like Roquan Smith helping to orchestrate the whole thing. That's the kind of defense the Ravens want. And I asked John Harbaugh today about, is he encouraged by the way the defense played down the stretch compared to the struggles they had early last season? And obviously he said yes, but yeah, that gives him the belief that they can start from where they left off last year, that there won't be the growing pains, Zach's first year, personnel, a little bit different, and having to make some start moves in the lineup. I think they have a better grasp on where the defense is now than they did at this time last year, and that there's a much better chance they'll start the season being one of the top defenses in the league. And if the Ravens have a top defense combined with what they can do offensively,
right,
that's a great formula for winning.
Yeah, then they could be the best team in the league.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I think that's where we talk about, like, what's the ceiling for this team. Like, if the defense picks up where they left off and they play really well and the offense continues to build on what they've been, it's hard to see this team, not being one of, if not the best team in the league. The other point on too in the secondary, he brought up some of the depth players who the Ravens are excited about. They're excited about TJ Tampa going into his second season. They're excited about Jalen Armour-Davis and his potential as a player who's looked good but just hasn't been able to stay on the field. Like, I'm still, to your point about wanting corners, like, I'm not at all ruling out the potential of drafting a corner high. Like, if they take a first-round corner, would not surprise me one bit. Not one bit. But if they don't go that route, I think they have the pieces in place to go out there and play and not really be in a bad spot. Like, I think that if they stay healthy in the secondary, the group that they have at the cornerback spot, they'll be in a really good place regardless of what they add in the draft. So I think they're in a really good position. A couple other notes here, news-wise. On the offensive side of the ball, running back, 2 points. When we talked about a Lamar Jackson extension, he was also asked about a Derrick Henry extension possibility. This has been something that DaCosta has talked about this offseason as well. Sounds like that's still on the table, and that the Ravens are optimistic about the possibility of getting that done too.
Yeah, and obviously we know what Derrick Henry did last year, the way he just came in.
It's a pretty good year, first year in Baltimore. I'll take it.
Not bad. And he talked a lot about how much he loved playing with the Ravens. And that's another thing, coming back to the Ravens culture, that when they bring in veteran players who have played their entire career sometimes elsewhere, they immediately feel comfortable and enjoy playing with the Ravens. So, yeah, I expect at some point an extension for Derrick Henry to get done, because he said he wants to finish his career here. So if Derrick Henry wants to finish his career for my football team, that's going to happen. So, yeah, and then I thought also Keaton Mitchell, asked about him, guy coming off a major injury. Last year, we didn't see the best of Keaton because just recovering from that devastating injury was a real grind. I think he's a guy who this year will be much healthier from the start. Justice Hill coming off his best season. I talked about the Ravens, in my opinion, having the best tight end group in the league. I also feel they have the best.
Yeah, it's hard to see a better running back group.
No.
Like when you obviously with Derek leading the way, and then the guys they have backing him up. Justice Hill had a great season last year, earned himself a contract extension, and Keaton Mitchell, like Harbaugh made the point, super serious knee injury, going back 2 years. So the fact that he played it all last year, the Ravens felt like that was almost an accomplishment in and of itself. Just getting on the field last year after that injury was significant. Was he at his best? He wasn't. He was working his way back. And so I think that there's real optimism around what he can bring. And like when you talk about Derrick Henry's going to get the heaviest workload, of course, but you want him to be fresh all throughout the year. And as we said many times last year with Keaton Mitchell, he doesn't need volume necessarily to make an impact. He can have one carry and take it to the house. He just has that home run threat. And so I think that that's like a perfect balance to what Derek gives you as the bell cow, what Justice gives you as a third down back and receiver out of the backfield. And then you have Keaton that you can mix in there with big play potential. And like the Ravens drafted Rasheen Ali last year, who showed some flashes, and the Ravens like him as well as a late round pick. So he's not out of the mix either. So I would agree with you. I'd be hard-pressed to find a better overall running back group than what the Ravens have right there. So I'm really excited about that group.
Yeah, I mean, the Ravens, they were last year a team that could hurt you in so many ways offensively. And I definitely feel for young players, it's even more important early in their career, you hope that they stay healthy. That, you talked about guys like T.J. Tampa and Jalen Armour-Davis that, injuries have set them back. Keaton Mitchell, another young player, had a serious injury early. When you're a veteran player and you've already been there, done that in the league, when you suffer an injury, you already know, well, I just need to get back healthy and I'll be able to do these things. I think for a younger player, it can be a little more difficult to set their development back a little bit more if they have a serious injury early. But Keaton Mitchell, that speed he brings, yeah, that's a game changer. And I mean, again, he doesn't have to be a guy and won't be a guy who has to carry it 15, 20 times a game. But the Ravens have so many weapons, and Todd Monken, I think, does a great job of utilizing those weapons. Week to week, they become a very difficult team to contain. And you're going to see some new wrinkles from Todd Monken this year with the mind he has and the tools he has to work with. We always know, I mean, he might be at a playground right somewhere right now.
Drawing up plays. Exactly. I bet he's in front of his whiteboard drawing up plays right now. So if I had a guess, he's doing that.
Exactly. So I think the Ravens, even though they had a great offense last year, this is not the ceiling that we've seen. They're still ascending, in my opinion.
Yeah, so those are some of the big takeaways that we had after hearing from head coach John Harbaugh here at the owners' meetings of West Palm Beach, Florida. As always, we'd love to hear from you, so send us your emails at thelounge@ravens.nfl.net. We're going to be catching up with some folks while we're down here, some media people, as well as some other folks who are here, so we're excited to bring all of that to you. So, as always, thank you so much for listening and for watching, and we will be back with you again tomorrow.